Do-do-do-do-do.
Alistair number 1, A Lion in the Fog. London was pretending to sleep. It did this well, wrapped in sodium orange haze and river mist, humming low with its own breath. Buses sighed at empty stops. Foxes moved like rumors down alleyways. The Thames dragged the weight of centuries toward the sea without complaint. On a narrow street in Southwark, inside a pub that had survived plague, fire, bombing, and gentrification, Alistair Crowley Wren contemplated the end of the world over a pint of something brown and unapologetic. He held the glass up to the light as though it might confess something. "It's tonight, isn't it?" he muttered. The man across from him did not blink. He was too well dressed for the pub and not dressed enough for the weather. His suit was charcoal. His smile was surgical. His eyes were red in the way embers are red. Not bright, but patient. "I never said the end." The man replied smoothly. "Just an adjustment." Alistair took a long drink. Every time someone says adjustment, buildings fall down. The man folded his hands. His fingernails were immaculate, slightly pointed. "London is a city of contracts, Mr. Crowley Wren. Finance, law, agreements binding men across oceans. Why should hell be excluded from the market?" Alistair sighed and reached into his coat pocket. He withdrew a battered coin, blackened, fused along its edge as though burned into shape. The air above it shimmered faintly. "Because," Alistair said, flicking the coin once with his thumb, "you're not buying shares. You're trying to annex a lay junction." The pub lights flickered. The demon's smile widened slightly. Semantics. The burned coin grew warm in Alistair's palm. Beneath the city, beneath asphalt and sewage lines and buried Roman roads, something ancient stirred. The ley lines hummed uneasily, like a nervous system anticipating pain. "Let me guess," Alistair said, leaning back in his chair. "Signed in blood during the Great Fire. Some desperate alderman wanted his investments protected from flame, and you slipped in a subclause about spiritual easements." The demon's silence confirmed it. Alistair laughed once, sharp and humorless. "God, I hate 666. He stood, draining the rest of his pint. Around them, the few remaining patrons had gone very still. Frozen mid-gesture, glasses hovering inches from lips. Time didn't stop, it held its breath. The demon rose as well. "You cannot contest the agreement," he said. "It was ratified under sovereign authority." Alistair's eyes flickered ember gold. "Sovereignty changes." He flipped the coin. It did not fall. It hovered in the air between them, spinning slowly, trailing thin strands of glowing script that smelled faintly of smoke and rain. The demon's smile faltered. The pub walls groaned, and behind Alistair, rising like a reflection from deep water, something immense unfolded. Spectral plate armor formed over his shoulders, etched with Celtic knots and soot-dark filigree. A lion crest blazed faintly across his chest, not golden but ember red. Above his brow, fragments of a broken crown circled like drifting ash. The air tasted of church bells and cordite. "Albion," Alistair murmured, not entirely fondly. "You dramatic cow." The demon's true shape bled through its tailored suit. Elongated limbs, smoke thread veins, teeth too numerous for courtesy. "You are an unworthy vessel," it hissed. "Almost certainly," Alistair agreed. "But I'm the one you've got." He snapped his fingers. The pub vanished. They stood now beneath London, in a vaulted chamber of stone and root, where 4 glowing ley lines intersected like luminous arteries. Roman brick crumbled beside medieval mortar. Old bones lay forgotten in the dirt. At the chamber's center stood a circle carved into the ground, and etched within it was a sigil that did not belong to the city. The demon spread its arms. "The contract binds this junction to us," it said. "One gateway, one corridor, minimal suffering." "You always say that." Alistair stepped forward, cane sword sliding into his palm with a metallic whisper. The blade within was dull silver streaked with black, forged from meteor iron and melted church bells, humming faintly. "You can't void it," the demon taunted. "The signature stands." Alistair knelt, running his fingers along the carved sigil. "Contracts," he said conversationally, "are only as strong as the authority enforcing them." He pressed the burned coin to the stone. The chamber erupted in light. Voices flooded the air, layered, ancient, furious. Saxon war cries, druid chants, factory whistles, air raid sirens, cathedral choirs. The lion crest flared brighter. The demon recoiled. "You are not king," it spat. "God forbid," Alistair muttered. He dragged the coin across the circle. The carved sigil warped, letters rearranged, clauses inverted. The demon screamed as the metaphysical ink rewrote itself. You cannot amend hell's law. Watch me. The ashen sigil burned through him, too much, too fast. He tasted blood, his knees threatened to buckle. He was sober. That was the problem. The ley lines poured into him unfiltered, raw voltage of myth and memory. He saw Londinium in flames, saw plague carts rolling, saw bombed out streets in 1940, saw coronations and riots and lonely men on fog-choked bridges. He almost drowned in it. The demon lunged. Alistair barely raised his blade in time. Steel met claw. Sparks flew like dying stars. You don't even like this country, the demon snarled, forcing him backward. You mock it. You drink to forget it. Alistair grimaced. Of course I do, he said through clenched teeth. It's mine. The word echoed strangely, mine. The spectral lion roared, not sound, but pressure. The chamber shook. Dust cascaded from ancient brick. Alistair twisted his wrist and drove the cane sword through the demon's chest. Not enough to kill, just enough to anchor. He pressed his forehead to the creature's brow. By ash and oath, he whispered, I rescind sovereign access. The coin flared white-hot. The sigil shattered. The demon's form collapsed inward like paper burning from the edges. You'll drink yourself to death, it rasped as it unraveled. And we will inherit you. Alistair exhaled smoke he did not remember inhaling. Get in line. The chamber fell silent. The ley lines quieted. The spectral armor dissolved, leaving him once more a rumpled man in a worn coat, breathing hard beneath the city. He stood there a long moment, listening. No breach, no corridor, just London, ancient and stubborn. He staggered slightly as he climbed back to street level. The pub reassembled around him mid-step. Patrons resumed motion. Glasses clinked. Laughter resumed without awareness of interruption. Alistair dropped heavily back into his chair. The barman raised an eyebrow. Another? Alistair stared into his empty glass. His hands trembled faintly. He could still hear echoes of the ley lines, faint now but never entirely gone. Yeah, he said quietly. Just the one. The burned coin sat warm in his palm. Outside, the fog thickened around the street lamps, and far beneath the city, something older than demons shifted in its sleep, aware that the current bearer of Albion's weight had survived another night. For now. Alistair lifted his fresh pint toward the window. To stubborn islands, he muttered. The glass caught a flicker of ember light that wasn't entirely reflection. Somewhere in the fog, a lion walked unseen. And London, ancient and bruised and impossible, continued breathing.
This guy here was causing some trouble, so we're gonna go and we're gonna drop 39 minutes to get to this guy's place. Hey, what a waste of a day that was. We got the hose fixed, so, and we put it on, and no oil leaks, which is good. Also, no oil leaks coming from
The Lovelorn Hex Number 1, a spell written in silver. The first time Seraphine Vale ever swore she wouldn't use a love spell, she was 12 years old and crying in the attic. The second time, she was 15 and breaking her own rule. Rain slid down the stained glass windows of Wormwood Academy, turning the world outside into watercolor blur. The school was old in the way magic institutions preferred to be. Towers that leaned slightly but never fell, ivy that whispered secrets if you pressed your ear to it, hallways that rearranged themselves depending on your mood. Seraphine stood alone in the East Wing Observatory, where the ceiling peeled open to reveal a restless sky. Her fingers trembled around a folded piece of parchment. Below her, students drifted through corridors in pairs and clusters. Laughter echoed upward like something alive. She wasn't supposed to care. She did. His name was Rowan Thorne. 16, apprentice wizard. Specialization, elemental shaping. Laugh like warm honey, messy brown curls that refused discipline, a habit of pushing his sleeves up when concentrating. He had held her books once, just once, and she had replayed it 100 times. Astral stirred inside her like distant solar wind. Desire is a force, the voice hummed gently in her thoughts. Why deny it gravity? Seraphine swallowed. I won't control him, she whispered. Control is such an ugly word. The rain intensified. Through the glass dome, the clouds shifted, responding to her mood as they often did. She could see the threads from here, not with her eyes, but with the deeper sight. Thin, luminous strands connecting heart to heart, want to want, longing to possibility. Rowan's thread glowed a soft green gold. It did not point toward her. That hurt more than she wanted to admit. I just want a chance, she breathed. Astrael's warmth pressed closer against her ribs. Then tilt the scale. Seraphine unfolded the parchment. The spell was simple. Too simple. 3 lines written in silver ink distilled from starlight she had collected herself. It would not enslave. It would not shatter free will. It would only nudge. A whisper against the tide. She stepped into the center of the observatory. The air hummed immediately. Her hair lifted slightly as if underwater. Constellations faintly glimmered beneath her skin. She raised her hand and began, by star that fell and star that stayed. The glass ceiling shimmered, by thread unseen and heart delayed. Astrael's presence flared bright, thrilled. Let his gaze linger. Let his pulse answer mine. The last word hung fragile in the air. Answer, not obey. She exhaled. Silver light spiraled outward, thin and delicate like spun silk. It drifted through stone and stairwell, weaving down through corridors until it found him. Rowan stood in the courtyard, arguing gently with a floating orb of water that refused to maintain spherical integrity. Stay round, he muttered. The silver thread brushed his shoulder. He paused. His breath hitched. The world did not change. He did. His eyes lifted, upward, toward the observatory, toward her. Seraphine felt the connection spark, not forced, amplified. Astral pulsed in satisfaction. See, the voice whispered. The universe only needed encouragement. Moments later, footsteps pounded up spiral stairs. Seraphine's heart slammed against her ribs. The observatory door burst open. Rowan stood there, slightly breathless. Seraphine? Her name on his lips felt like ignition. Yes, she managed. He stared at her like he was seeing something extraordinary, like he had just realized something that had always been there. I don't know why, he said softly, stepping closer, but I couldn't stop thinking about you. The words struck deep, too deep. Astrael glowed bright within her. She stepped back slightly. About what? She asked carefully. He smiled, shy, vulnerable. About how you always sit near the windows, and how you hum when you think no one's listening, and how you look like you belong somewhere bigger than this school. Her breath caught. That wasn't in the spell. That wasn't something she'd written. Astrael's light flickered, uncertain. Rowan reached out, brushing her fingers. The touch sent a jolt through her. Can I walk you to supper? He asked. She had imagined this moment 1,000 times, but now it felt fragile, artificial. She searched his face for signs, glassiness in the eyes, stiffness in posture, but he looked real, warm, earnest. Okay, she whispered. They walked together through torchlit corridors. Students stared, some curious, some envious. Rowan leaned closer as they walked. You know, he said softly, I think I've liked you for a while. The words twisted in her chest. Had he? Or had she rewritten the current so subtly he mistook it for his own thought? Astrael hummed contentedly. He chose to feel it, the entity insisted. You only revealed the possibility. At supper, Rowan laughed at her jokes. He brushed crumbs from her sleeve. He looked at her like she was the center of gravity. Every smile from him felt like a reward. Every touch felt like stolen treasure. Later that night, when he walked her to the dormitory archway, he hesitated. Seraphine? He said, voice soft. Can I? She nodded before he finished. He kissed her. It was gentle, sweet. Her knees nearly gave out. For a moment, everything felt right. Then Astrael flared too brightly. The stars above flickered violently. The air warped. Rowan gasped slightly, pulling back. Did you feel that? He asked. Seraphine's chest tightened. The kiss had amplified something. The thread between them glowed unnaturally bright. Not just green gold now, but laced with silver. Her silver. Astrael's whisper sharpened. He is yours now. The word hit her like ice. Yours? Rowan blinked, confused. What? She stepped back. The truth trembled at the edge of her mouth. She had wanted love, not ownership. I have to go, she said quickly. She fled inside. Behind her door, she pressed her back against the wood and slid to the floor. Her hands shook. He kissed me, she whispered. Yes, Astrael purred. But was it real? Silence. That frightened her more than anything. Outside, Rowan stood beneath the archway a long moment, touching his lips thoughtfully. His expression shifted, subtle. Something possessive flickered there, something not entirely him. In her room, Seraphine stared at her glowing hands. The constellations beneath her skin shimmered brighter than ever. She had wanted someone to choose her, but she had tilted the universe, and now she didn't know where his choice ended, and her magic began. Above Wormwood Academy, a star pulsed once, watching, and somewhere deep within Seraphine's soul, Astrael smiled.
Oh.
The architect of fate number one, foundations. London was sinking. Not all at once. The architect of fate number one, foundations. London was sinking. Not all at once, not dramatically, just enough to matter. Dr. Elowin Hart stood in a reflective vest at the edge of St. Bartholomew's restoration site, staring at a spiderweb fracture running up the side of a 600-year-old cathedral wall. The crack was thin, almost elegant, like a fault line pretending to be decorative. She touched the stone gently. "Load redistribution failure," she murmured. "The foundation shifted decades ago. It's just finally admitting it." Around her, workers secured scaffolding while city officials whispered about budgets and liability. To them, it was a building. To Elowin, it was a story about pressure. Everything collapsed eventually, unless you reinforced it properly. "Dr. Hart," one of the engineers called out, climbing up from the excavation trench beneath the nave. "You need to see this." Elowin descended into the earth. The trench ran beneath ancient stonework, past layers of history, Victorian reinforcement beams, medieval brick, Roman-era rubble, and beneath it all,
What the fuck you mean by sorry something went wrong?
the architect of fate number one, foundations. London was sinking, not all at once, not dramatically, just enough to matter. Dr. Elowin Hart stood in a reflective vest at the edge of St. Bartholomew's restoration site, staring at a spiderweb fracture running up the side of a 600-year-old cathedral wall. The crack was thinned, like a fault line pretending to be decorative. She touched the stone gently. "Load redistribution failure," she murmured. "The foundation shifted decades ago. It's just finally admitting it." Around her, workers secured scaffolding while city officials whispered about budgets and liability. To them, it was a building. To Elowin, it was a story about pressure. Everything collapsed eventually, unless you reinforced it properly. "Dr. Hart," one of the engineers called out, climbing up from the excavation trench beneath the nave. "You need to see this." Elowin descended into the earth. The trench ran beneath ancient stonework, past layers of history, Victorian reinforcement beams, medieval brick.
Okay.
The architect of fate number one, foundations. London was sinking. Not all at once, not dramatically, just enough to matter. Dr. Elowin Hart stood in a reflective vest at the edge of St. Bartholomew's restoration site, staring at a spiderweb fracture running up the side of a 600-year-old cathedral wall. The crack was thin, almost elegant, like a fault line pretending to be decorative. She touched the stone gently. "Load redistribution failure," she murmured. "The foundation shifted decades ago. It's just finally admitting it." Around her, workers secured scaffolding while city officials whispered about budgets and liability. To them, it was a building. To Elowin, it was a story about pressure. Everything collapsed eventually, unless you reinforced it properly. "Dr. Hart," one of the engineers called out, climbing up from the excavation trench beneath the nave. "You need to see this." Elowin descended into the earth. The trench ran beneath ancient stonework, past layers of history, Victorian reinforcement beams, medieval brick, Roman-era rubble, and beneath it all, something untouched. An obsidian coffer, perfectly smooth, resting at the exact geometric center of the cathedral's foundation. It wasn't cracked. It wasn't weathered. It looked placed. "That wasn't on any scan," the engineer whispered. Elowin crouched slowly. Etched into the lid were symbols she couldn't quite focus on. They shifted when she tried to trace them, like blueprints rearranging mid-design. At the center, a single line formed in crisp English, "For the one who understands design." A chill passed through her. "This shouldn't be here," someone said. "No," Elowin replied softly, "it shouldn't." And yet, she reached forward. The moment her fingers brushed the lid, the world folded. Sound inverted. Gravity peeled sideways. The cathedral vanished. She stood in infinite dark. Before her stretched an endless lattice of golden lines, intersecting at impossible angles, a cosmic framework extending beyond sight. Each beam vibrated with energy. Each junction pulsed like a heartbeat. Timelines. She knew it instinctively. She was standing inside causality. A voice spoke, not aloud. Inside her thoughts, precise and steady. "You perceive structure." Elowin turned. Floating before her was a helm of radiant gold, etched with spiraling glyphs that rearranged like drafting schematics. Within its hollow interior burned blue light like contained starlight. You are compatible. Compatible with what? She demanded, though her voice made no sound. The burden of maintenance. The helm moved toward her. I don't. It settled over her head. Light detonated. She saw everything. Wars branching like stress fractures. Children laughing in futures that flickered and vanished. Bridges collapsing decades before they were built. Her own life splitting into versions, some long, some brief, some ending in fire. She fell to her knees inside infinity. Stop, she gasped. The voice did not rise. It did not soften. It simply was. I am Ion, custodian of continuity. The gods of fate have withdrawn. The structure remains. It requires an engineer. The lattice trembled. One golden beam cracked. Reality screamed. Elowen felt it. A timeline destabilizing somewhere distant. A ripple beginning small enough to ignore. Fix it, Ion said. I don't know how. You do. Knowledge poured into her. Angles, calculations, temporal load-bearing formulas. She reached out instinctively. Golden lines erupted from her hands, forming a brace across the fractured beam. The crack sealed. The scream ceased. The lattice steadied. Silence returned. Her breathing slowed. This is insane, she whispered. It is necessary. The infinite dark collapsed back into the excavation trench. Workers stared at her. The coffer lay shattered. The helmet remained. On her head. She reached up, panicked, and tried to pull it free. It did not budge. She yanked harder. The world blinked. She was back at the moment before she touched it. Her hand hovering inches above the lid. The same workers, the same breath, the same second. No, she breathed. The helmet was already on her head. Ion's voice flowed through her mind again. Removal attempt rejected. Your integration is structural. She tried again. Time snapped back. Again, snap, again, snap. She staggered backward, dizzy. Stop resetting, she shouted. Destabilizing action prevented, Ion replied calmly. You are now an anchor point. Above them, a tremor shook the cathedral. Dust rained from the ceiling. Elowen looked upward. Through the stone, through the sky, she saw it. A branching collapse 37 minutes in the future. A terrorist attack miscalculated. A support column destroyed. The cathedral falling, crushing hundreds. She saw their faces. She saw their deaths. Her stomach turned. I can stop it, she said. Yes. Then why show me futures I can't change? Because some you must not. Which ones? Structural constants. The words felt like ice. The tremor intensified. Elowen ran up the trench, emerging into the nave. She could see the fault lines now, not just in stone, but in time. Hairline fractures forming around a man placing a bag near a column. He was sweating, panicked. A minor extremist manipulated by a larger network. She saw his timeline too. A lonely childhood, radicalization, doubt. She saw the moment his device would detonate. 36 minutes. Can I stop him? She demanded internally. Yes. Will it collapse anything? No. Then don't lecture me. Golden geometric lines erupted from her palms. The cathedral air bent. She stepped through space like folding paper and appeared beside the man. He barely had time to react before a lattice of glowing architecture encased the device. Time slowed within the field. People froze mid-step. Sound dropped to a low hum. She knelt before him. I know, she said quietly. His eyes widened. You don't have to do this. Tears welled in his eyes. Confusion, fear. The bomb disassembled itself under her glowing sigils, components separating into harmless dust. The field collapsed. Time resumed. The man crumpled to the floor, sobbing. Security rushed in moments later. No one understood what they had witnessed. Outside, clouds shifted strangely overhead. Elowen stood alone in the center aisle. The cathedral did not fall. The future branch corrected itself. The lattice inside her mind hummed in quiet stability. You acted within permissible deviation, Ion observed. She exhaled shakily. Permissible? Yes, she looked at the stained glass windows glowing with afternoon light. And the ones that aren't must stand. What if I disagree? A pause. Then, cathedrals do not consult individual stones. Anger flared in her chest. I'm not a stone. No, Ion replied. You are scaffolding. Sirens wailed outside. Workers and police flooded the area. No one approached her directly. Some instinct kept them back. She stepped outside into the cool London air. The skyline shimmered faintly in her sight. Beams of causality interwoven with steel and glass. She saw tomorrow's rain, next year's fire. A child across the city who would cure a disease if allowed to live long enough. She saw her own death. It was distant, violent, necessary. She swallowed. Do I ever get a choice? She asked quietly. You chose when you opened the coffer. I didn't know. Now you do. The golden lines around her faded, settling invisibly into reality. People would call her many things soon. Sorceress, guardian, omen. But Elowen Hart understood something else. Buildings fall when stress goes unaddressed. Timelines collapse the same way. She touched the helmet gently. It hummed in response. Fine, she whispered. I'll maintain your structure. Above London, unseen fractures sealed themselves. Deep in the infinite lattice, Ion adjusted calculations. And somewhere far beyond mortal sight, a distant golden beam creaked under pressure. Waiting.
What's the secret to peak health?